Last week I promised to provide a brief update on some of the accounting items that have to be addressed to bring Camber current with its public filings. So today's that update. And at the same time, I wanted to provide some background that I think would be helpful for stakeholders so they can understand a bit of the history of the two companies and also what we're trying to accomplish going forward. So quickly, prior to any dealings with Viking, Camber, its revenues for the 12-month period ending March 31 were about $2.74 million. And its revenues for the following year-end March 31, 2020, were a total of $397,000. So it was obvious that Camber had to do something for the benefit of its then stakeholders and to maintain its listing on the New York Stock Exchange AMEX division. Viking, over the last few years, our goal is always to become a diversified energy company. The initial emphasis was acquiring interest in oil and gas properties, primarily in the onshore Gulf Coast area. That's where we had extensive relationships. But was always the goal, over the years, it was getting more and more difficult to raise appropriate capital on the OTC platform. So the objective was to uplist to a national exchange, either directly or potentially through a merger with an existing listed company. And we had entertained a merger arrangement last year with Camber, but it was getting delayed for various reasons. So that was terminated. And it was ultimately decided that Camber was just going to make a direct equity investment in Viking. So that first investment occurred in December of last year, and that's the time where I became president and CEO of Camber, in addition to being president and CEO of Viking. So Camber's acquired 51% of Viking's common shares at that time, and since then has acquired more through a couple of additional equity transactions, so the total is about 73%. So that exists right now. And so the parties have also signed a merger agreement to try to get the remainder of the Viking shares under the Camber umbrella. Nothing can happen with respect to that planned merger until Camber's current with its filings, but that's the state of affairs now. But with a majority interest, Camber, so without the merger happening, Camber can already consolidate Viking's revenues and other financial information at the Camber level. Now, of course, we have to show that and we will show that with Camber's filings, but the full merger doesn't have to happen for Camber to be able to consolidate Viking's financials at the Camber level. And Viking, just from its oil and gas division, for its year-end 2019, its revenues were $34.5 million, and for the revenues as of 12/31/2020 were about $40.2 million. And of course that's just oil and gas. It doesn't include, in August of this year, we purchased a majority interest in Simpson Maxwell, the power solutions company. And so the next filings of Viking will show the revenues attributable to that acquisition. So that's where we're going. So Viking, again, totally current with its public filings. Camber, when they made the acquisitions, the auditor had to get up to speed with everything that Viking had, and that took way longer than it should have, admittedly. It just was a long process. And then when that was essentially complete, it was decided that Camber had to address some legacy accounting treatment, specifically related to the sale of preferred stock. As I mentioned last week, Camber sold preferred stock over the years, and management classified that as permanent equity on its balance sheet. The auditor signed off on that every year. But then on further reflection, looking at the certificate of designation, there was an argument that it should have been classified as outside of permanent equity. So we corrected those items in that certificate of designation in April of this year. So it's our view going forward, it's permanent equity. But for prior years, it should have been classified outside of permanent equity. So the financial statements of Camber from 2020, the K and the subsequent Qs, they have to be corrected for that specific item. And that's fine. So in our view, it was inefficient. Camber had its auditor, Viking had its auditor, a separate auditor. That was inefficient for the organization. So last week, after I gave the update, within about 60 seconds after, we dismissed Camber's legacy auditor, and now Viking's auditor has been engaged to be the independent auditor for the entire organization. So we're extremely pleased with that. We think that's just more efficient for everybody. So now, Viking's auditor, of course, already knows what's going on here. And so now they just get up to speed at the Camber level, and that will happen. The deadline for Camber filing its financial statements is November 19th or thereabouts. As I mentioned last week, the goal is to get them filed before that deadline. So, and we're confident with the team that we have that will get done. So, in the meantime, as I told you, it's business as usual. We're trying to always improve the oil and gas division, and then we're very excited about the transactions that we've completed in the Power Solutions and Clean Energy division, including the acquisition of the majority interest in Simpson Maxwell and the exclusive IP license agreement with ESG Clean Energy. And on that note, representatives of Simpson Maxwell and myself, we're actually going to Holyoke. We're scheduled to go to Holyoke next week, and that's where ESG Clean Energy is installing one of its carbon capture systems. So we're going to take a look at the status of the construction of that site and meet with the ESG reps and just talk about the integrating that strategy, that marketing strategy within the Simpson Maxwell platform, so we can market it across Canada. And as many of you know, Canada, not just Canada, everywhere it's important to reduce the carbon footprint, but the carbon tax that's in place throughout this country is going to get more expensive every year. So organizations that are emitting carbon CO2 are more determined than ever to reduce the carbon footprint, and we believe we can help with the ESG clean energy technology and other systems that we're looking at. So, weather permitting, as soon as we can get there, the plan is to be there late next week, and we'll try to provide you with an update from the site. Thank you.